I'm the co-founder and CEO of Bonumose, which is a enzyme technology company operating primarily in the field of sugar reduction. So we have a unique enzymatic pathway to produce Tagatose and other monosaccharides with high efficiency, high yield, low cost compared to other methods, eliminating multiple processing steps and being able to reduce the costs so that these healthy alternatives to sugar are affordable for global mass market use. I look forward to answering your questions.
That's great. And Ed, when you are saying low cost solution, would you like to elaborate it? I mean, in the past, we have seen that solutions like allulose, Tagatose, those have been costly options. And what type of numbers you have in mind when we are talking about cost reduction? Will it be accessible to the masses, or it's going to be still costly compared to the available alternatives?
Well, obviously a lot depends on scale, but even at low scale, we believe we can offer a very competitive price and are offering a competitive price today at a fairly tiny scale. We are producing today Tagatose in a commercial setting that we own and operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, a continuous production process. But I'll explain how, what we do is different. Maybe the clearest example would be the allulose process. And we're not currently making allulose because we're focusing on Tagatose, and there are many other companies that are making allulose, but our process is very different from the typical way that allulose is made. So the typical way that allulose is made is that fructose is converted to allulose with an enzyme. But that enzymatic reaction is a reversible reaction. It produces allulose from fructose, but it also produces fructose from allulose. So it reaches an equilibrium. And in the case of this conversion, the equilibrium favors fructose substantially. So the yield that is obtained is usually only around 25 or 30% yield. Now, keep in mind that fructose itself typically comes from glucose. So glucose is isomerized into fructose, and that too is a reversible enzymatic reaction where it slightly favors glucose and you get 42% yield of fructose. And then the glucose comes from starch. And so there's multiple steps in that process. And you can get allulose and the allulose can be purified, but there's multiple steps and multiple separations and purifications that are required. Our process is different. We start with starch and we go directly to allulose using an irreversible enzymatic reaction. So it's not a reaction that goes both ways. It only goes one direction. And this is what we have patented globally. And so we're getting 85% yields of allulose in a single enzymatic reaction, as opposed to that multiple step, multiple reactions process that others do for allulose. So that's why we're able to eliminate processing steps and get higher purities and higher yields. And the higher purities means the downstream processing and purification is easier. To get from 85% allulose to 100% allulose is a lot easier than going from 25% allulose to 100% allulose. So that's why we do this different. And you might hear about better enzymes that can convert fructose to allulose, but they're still going to be limited by that equilibrium. That's just almost like a constant, like gravity. And our process is entirely different. So we're circumventing equilibrium constants. And that's really the unique thing that my co-founder and chief scientific officer, Dr. Daniel Wichelecki, invented. Now, we also do that for Tagatose. The thing about Tagatose is that it's even more complicated to make Tagatose than it is to make allulose. Tagatose today from other companies, and I think maybe only China is the last remaining place where Tagatose is made through this other process, is lactose is split. Well, first of all, lactose comes from whey, from dairy production. You have to purify it. You then split the lactose into glucose and galactose. You get rid of the glucose part. And then the galactose, there's an enzyme that will convert that to Tagatose at maybe 35 or 40% yields. So again, ultimately, you're getting very, very low yields, low purities, multiple steps, and Bonumose can go directly from the starch. Technically, it's maltodextrin, but sometimes for shorthand, we say starch. We can go directly from that to Tagatose at extremely high yields, 85% and higher. And that makes purification easier. So that's what we do that drives down the cost. And it's globally scalable. There's nothing about what we're doing that is not scalable. I guess I'll talk about that a little bit, then take a breath. We're using feedstock, which is globally abundant. It's starch produced globally from multiple botanical sources. It's not like it's just produced on the island of Cyprus in February. It's something that's everywhere. We use the same type of processing equipment as is found in high fructose corn syrup plants and sugar refineries, and can actually reutilize or repurpose these facilities to make tagatose and allulose instead of high fructose corn syrup and cane sugar. The tagatose in particular, but also allulose, is kind of a drop-in replacement for regular sugar in food production, and we can get into the details on that. And then the eating experience is delightful because it's the same taste and texture. And then enzymes, of course, can be globally scaled, and we're already producing them at very large scales. So there's nothing that inhibits our global scale-up of this unique process.
That's fantastic, Ed. When you are saying that you are not using anything from dairy origin like it's happening in China, it's purely of plant origin, and scalability will not be an issue because the way you are explaining, I feel that it can be scaled up easily and it can be produced for masses. That's a fantastic thing.
Right. So it's may be a revolutionary concept to have, quote, sugar that is healthy for you. And I can make the case in this discussion about why tagatose is actually good for you. But what we are doing does not require a revolution of food value chains. We can work within existing food value chains with existing equipment. Oftentimes that high fructose corn syrup equipment is not fully utilized because of the decreased demand for high fructose corn syrup. And so that just makes the scalability that much easier. And this is usually something where the companies that are in this, the large companies that are in this business, they recognize, oh, okay, we see the pathway to this being globally scalable.
That's fantastic. And otherwise, if we have to put it in this way, for future large-scale production, do you see any challenges that can come up? From the IP angle, you seem secure. You have patented the technology. It seems to be a unique technology for Bonumose, and you can easily scale it up. But any challenges you need to highlight?
Well, we have very good patents, very strong patents globally, including in China. And so when we have a lot of years left on those patents. Now there's always the challenge of infringers, and we've had to deal with companies that claim to have invented something that they lifted from the pages of our patents. But so that's always a challenge. And they say that imitation is the highest form of flattery, but we would just as soon not be flattered in that way. There are no, there are no structural impediments in terms of feedstock or production equipment or anything like that. And it's not like that food production environments must be retooled to use tagatose or allulose, because they can be in crystallized form, they can be in syrup form. Anything that sugar can do, they can do also. The only challenge I would say is regulatory. Tagatose and allulose are approved in multiple places. Allulose is a little behind, and there's some challenges in Europe on getting that approved. But the labeling is an issue. There are some countries. Now Singapore is not one of these. Singapore is actually ahead, and it's a testament to Singapore being advanced in this way. But there are some countries where tagatose and allulose are required to be labeled as added sugars. In the United States, allulose is exempted, tagatose is not. We think that is just a completely boneheaded, and you can use that quote, decision by the FDA and will be changed. But that's a challenge where the regulators in some countries are actually the biggest barrier to adoption of healthier foods.
But it is low in calorie. We have to admit that, right?
Oh, sure. Tagatose is 60, as you know from your report, 62% lower calories than sucrose. It has a prebiotic effect in the gut. It lowers blood sugar levels. So it doesn't just not increase, but it actually has a moderating effect. It's good for teeth, not just safe, but actually good for teeth. And one of our customers is a dental products company, which is using it in the material that cleans teeth in the dental office. So it's good. It's something that should be, particularly Tagatose. Now, allulose does not have the prebiotic effect, but Tagatose is something that is, has almost like therapeutic-like benefits and should be encouraged to be eaten, not discouraged.
Right. And Ed, one thing which I would like to highlight to established companies, how Bonumose would be different compared to the competing companies. There are other companies out there which are preparing allulose, and some might be working on Tagatose as well. So would you like to share some thoughts here?
Well, there are a lot of sugar alternative startups that are out there, and there are some very good sugar alternative startups that are out there, and there probably will be a lot of winners in this space. We think that Tagatose, because of how it, and also to some degree allulose, but really more so Tagatose, because of how it mimics sugar in terms of taste and functionality and flavor, will be among the biggest of winners. And in terms of our process, our process for making allulose, I've described how that's different. I've seen nothing in the literature or patents or anything else about a Tagatose production process that is anywhere close to what we're doing, unless they're copying what we're doing. And then in that case, they would be blocked by our patents that have priority. So it is part of our job to monitor what's happening in the patent landscape to make sure that we're not being copied. But we have not heard of anything that would make that Tagatose production as low cost as our process, or allulose production as low cost as our process. We're very happy to see companies talk about allulose and Tagatose because we think it increases the awareness of them. We also have not seen any other alternative that is, overall better in terms of taste or functionality or health benefits than Tagatose. There may be some alternatives, different alternatives, that are better in certain applications, but overall, we think that Tagatose is the closest thing to being a drop-in replacement.
Right. And Ed, when we are talking about other alternatives, stevia has been quite popular in the recent time, plant origin, but we do know there are certain issues. How do you compare the future market for Tagatose when a majority of the companies, they are also eyeing on stevia?
Sure. So stevia is great. Tagatose blends really well with stevia. One of the things with stevia is that it needs a bulking agent.
Right.
It's certainly in, everything, may not need it in beverages, but even in beverages, oftentimes a bulking material is required to give it the same mouthfeel. And so, stevia is super sweet compared to regular sugar. Tagatose is 92% as sweet as regular sugar. So Tagatose is almost exactly the same. And makes a big difference in a lot of food applications. But Tagatose blends really well. It even blends with Reb A, which is typically the one that does not taste as good. And so Tagatose can add the mouthfeel. It also makes the sweetness onset and lingering more palatable. It improves the flavor. And that's another thing about Tagatose. It's a really excellent carrier of flavors. Compared to other alternatives. So we think Tagatose and stevia, and allulose too, but mainly Tagatose, could really work well together in a synergistic sweetener blend, which would allow for 100% replacement of sugar in beverages while still retaining the taste and mouthfeel that consumers want.
That's fantastic. So we'll say that we'll not see Tagatose as a competitor of stevia, but it can be an accelerator to even
I
improve
think,
the use of stevia and participate in that journey.
yeah, absolutely. I think that stevia, probably you could sell more stevia with Tagatose than you could without it.
Mm.
And so we do not see it as a competitor. Now, this also applies to monk fruit. It applies to sweet proteins. So other high intensity sweeteners, we think that the combination is stronger than just that high intensity sweetener alone.
Right.
And in some cases, stronger than Tagatose alone. Um, and as you may know, one of our strategic partners and strategic investors is Symrise, the global flavor company,
Right.
one of the top flavor companies in the world. And, they're experts at high intensity sweeteners.
And then they are trying to improve upon the shortcomings like bulk sweeteners that can provide sometimes high intensity sweeteners. They have a bitter aftertaste, and I'm assuming that it's not only the bulkiness, but it will be the taste improvement, mouthfeel. All such shortcomings can be handled by clubbing Tagatose with all these high intensity sweeteners.
Right. And also, think about ice cream. So, there was a brand of ice cream a few years ago that became very popular in the United States, and it's still a popular brand. But it was very, very hard when it, because it's frozen, of course, and the sweeteners that were used there included a high intensity sweetener, and then I think also maybe a polyol. But they tended to get really, really hard when cold. But
Yeah.
Tagatose depresses the freezing point in ice cream, so it allows for the creamy texture that people want in ice cream and gelato and other frozen products. It may actually do that too well. It does it a little bit better than sucrose, and so that's where the expertise of Symrise comes in, because some of their flavors with modifying properties can bring it up to where it matches sucrose even closer. But that the blending properties of Tagatose maybe are more clear when it comes to beverages when it blends with high intensity sweeteners. But yes, it also can apply to other categories as well.
That's fantastic. And Bonumose is doing fantastic research. And what will be your comments on the future improvements that we all can expect from Bonumose?
Yeah, well, other products you mean, or
Or maybe improvements within Tagatose based on ongoing
okay.
research. What can we expect in the upcoming properties, or maybe what improvements we can expect in Tagatose?
Yeah, so with Tagatose, it's a monosaccharide. It's a single ingredient, which, like we talked about, can be blended. Most of the work around how to use Tagatose in food products is something that we leave to our customers or our distribution partners, and we focus on the best way of making Tagatose. Now, there are some interesting things that can be done with Tagatose beyond food. And one of those is Tagatose has a proven ability to prevent the growth of harmful pathogens in certain plants. So it has an antifungal effect, an antimicrobial effect in certain plants, potatoes, grapevines, tomatoes, and others. So we have a customer, actually a few interested parties in that application of Tagatose. So where Tagatose is the active ingredient, but that's not something that we do. We just supply the Tagatose. There also are some. I mentioned how Tagatose has almost therapeutic benefits. Well, that's really kind of underselling it, because Tagatose does have therapeutic benefits. I don't want to disclose too much in a recording on that, but there are some ways where Tagatose could be used to where it's antimicrobial benefits in people and animals, and then some other things that it can do.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of how to make Tagatose better, we are continually making improvements to the enzymes, to the enzyme production process, to the way of immobilizing the enzymes, which is the process by which they can be used for months at a time. So we're constantly making improvements to that, and that will allow us to continually drive down the cost of Tagatose even below where we are today. And then that same enzyme set that we use for Tagatose is almost the exact same set that we use for allulose. And then also almost the exact same set we use for other things that can be made from starch. So one example is mannose. Mannose is, the volume is very, very small compared to sugar, but it's effective for urinary tract infection treatment in humans and animals, and has some other benefits in the in food and even in skincare. And our process can make mannose too. So we will be continuing to improve the enzymes in a way that allows us to make not only Tagatose and allulose better, but all the other stuff that can come off of the same pathway.
That sounds really interesting, considering that the therapeutic uses that are there, it's a untouched market. I think you are differentiating yourself from the other sweetener companies where this can be a good business opportunity as well. And
I think so. We do focus on sugar reduction, and I mean that's the number one focus. But there are definitely these adjacencies where there's some really interesting things that can be done with Tagatose. And in some cases, they could be very high volume. Like, on the crop protection side, if it's limited to just organic, then it's a smaller volume. But if it gets adopted in conventional agriculture, I mean, those are some, potato is a major global,
right.
And so the volumes could get significant. So it could quickly become not just an adjacency, but actually a real
mainstream product,
volume driver.
Yeah.
Right. And at a good cost too, and certainly safe for the soil, safe for the plants, safe for the workers, safe for the producers of the ingredient compared to chemical fungicides.
So Ed, the way you are explaining, I'm really excited about it, considering that it's not just another sweetener, and Bonumose is really having a vision towards different areas, starting from crop protection, entering into the humans as well for therapeutic uses. Like you mentioned, it's a kind of all-purpose thing which has all the unique benefits.